Alfred Tennyson has himself said that Ulysses is more of a personal reflection of himself than even in memoriam, and that it represented his, quote, need of going forward and braving the struggle of life. He admits that he wrote this in deep mourning after his friend Arthur Henry Hallam's death. Hallam died in 1833, and Tennyson was writing this poem for the next 9 to 10 years. He was roughly the same period of time in which he wrote and published The Lotus Eaters, another Odyssey-themed verse. He published it in a 2-volume edition titled Poems of 1842, his third major publication, which contains individual poems like Break, 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 Locksley Hall, and St. Agnes Eve. The poem itself is a dramatic monologue, although the presence and identity of the audience is uncertain. It is arguably elegiac and uses blank verse, generally unrhymed iambic pentameter, less than 70 lines broken into 3 different sections. The opening lines set the tone for melancholy mourning, which becomes the primary mode of Tennyson's poetic voice throughout his career. It little profits that an idle king by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. The poem is written in the immediate wake of Hallam's death, Tennyson's great friend from his days at Cambridge, and you can see the indolence of depression and grief in the specificity of that idle figure. Significantly, the heroic age of classical Greek culture would likely be reminiscent for Tennyson of those days with Hallam, since it was at Cambridge that the two of them would have studied the Homeric poems. Barren Crags also strikes a note of wasteland aesthetics long before Eliot was publicly disparaging Tennyson and the Victorian poets generally. An aged wife, that's an interesting little nugget. Aged wife suggests a undercurrent of some misogyny, perhaps, where the character of the wife is the anchor on her husband's greatness. Some critics will also read this as a hint of homosexuality in perspective. The male hero feels trapped in female domesticity and yearns for the male world of escapist adventure. And of course, the rumors of homosexuality or suggestions have been a topic of some speculation between Tennyson and Hallam for the past 150 years. This itself is broadened to a general malaise as Ulysses complains about the unheroic meaningless of mundane activities. I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. Critics have pointed that this sounds a little bit like Hamlet's soliloquy. What is a man if his chief good and market of his time be but to sleep and feed? A beast no more, sleep and feed. That emphasis is a very specific callback for Tennyson to put Ulysses and himself largely in the position of struggling with thoughts of suicide. From these depths of depression, the speaker then takes a turn and reacts somewhat defiantly, even while acknowledging that the self-assertion for active diversion comes at a cost. The turns suffered suggest a bipolarity, but also mimics the twists and turns of Polycarp on Odysseus. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone on shore, And when through scudding drifts the rainy Hyades vexed the dim sea, I am become a name. For always roaming with a hungry heart, much have I seen and known, cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honored of them all, and drunk delight of battle with my peers, far on the ringing plains of windy Troy. Then Tennyson and Ulysses wax philosophical, striving for the parallel experiences of the material world here on earth and a spiritual world beyond mortal perception. I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. This is then followed by more complaining, but against that immediate backdrop of speculation about eternity. And almost as if the thoughts of death were an undercurrent, persistent, only occasionally perceptible, to the most mundane thoughts about life. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use, as though to breathe were life, life piled on life, were all too little, and of one to me, little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things. And vile it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself, and this gray spirit yearning in desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. The middle passage gets a little metrically wobbly as Ulysses seems to turn to introduce his son as his replacement on Ithaca. This is my son, my own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor by slow prudence, to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. You can hear that little shifting in emphasis there. When discussing his handling of running Ithaca to Telemachus, Ulysses begins tripping over the pentameter. It's here, perhaps, that the character begins to feel misgivings about his son's readiness and maybe even about his own determination. Look how the meter breaks down at well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor, by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. It's a little jangly there. The first and fourth lines maintain the rhythm, but that second and third falter, complicated further by the enjambments at the end of each line. These lines are the very ones at the heart of the poem, and they come almost exactly at its center, the crucial center of classical composition, and represent the exact quotidian sticking point prompting Ulysses to leave in search of further adventures. There is almost a disdain in Ulysses' description of his own son's relative virtues that suit him for so unheroic a life. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. The distinction between the two, the separation between the two, almost the objectification of that life, the road he no longer wants to travel, for Ulysses to look in disgust at that ordinary daily life. This tentative passage gives way in the second half of the poem, where the language builds and rushes along. Occasional spondees keep it from becoming monotonous and also emphasize the possibility of hesitance. Nevertheless, the steady cadence overwhelms with the call to adventure and quest for imperialism and dominion that fueled so much of Victorian Britain, but also the spirit of soulfulness at a time of the increasing materialism of English society as London becomes the capital of the modern economic world. The last section also switches in tone from melancholy introspection to a kind of motivational call to arms, seemingly aimed at an audience, or perhaps a swelling crescendo to drown out the self-destructive impulses given voice at the beginning. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail, there glooms the dark broad seas, my mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine and opposed. Free hearts, free foreheads, you and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all but something ere the end. Some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, the long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western sky until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Although even this thunderous ending has been problematized by critics who see in it shades of Milton's Paradise Lost, which has Satan's courage never to submit or yield, this posits that Ulysses is a similar figure to Satan, both heroic outsiders in an environment that cannot recognize their heroic properties, but seen objectively, those same properties become evil. Souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, and death closes all. This harkens to Dante's placement in Canto 26 of L'Inferno, where Ulysses is the bad leader who lies to his men to lure them to his death. Dante is a powerful influence on much of Tennyson's work, probably most evident here and in his masterpiece In Memoriam, both of which are centered in the progress and processing of grief from a pit of depression towards the promise of future happiness ahead. Like Keats's Nightingale, the urge to soar beyond the constraints of fate are tempered by inevitability, which makes the doom striving a melancholy but never cynical act. Auden later claimed that Tennyson had, quote, the finest ear perhaps of any English poet. The talent of the ear gives his work its sonorous distinction, one that sets him above all of his contemporaries of Victorian England, to be sure. Ear, however, is a reactive skill, while a more varied and vigorous voice might bring further beyond the limits of those same aesthetic conventions. Of all Tennyson's work, Ulysses might come closest to doing just that.